Shubor nakaslem jong unongsan Hima.
Menteri Ramba Kajla Conrad Sangma Ulong baka hukum nagayiyang Bishar High Court kaong bakamdan kanu hukundon hak Meghalaya Resident Safety and Security Act banbu iki jakarung jakami hapo Meghalaya. Ulong badai nakanikadaw baka pensyamjing eka sorkar ban menteri kam banbu iki entry but exit point Kajla but nakanikadaw baka sorkar kalahap ban khangno iki facilitation center kibakala depshna ki katukani ki jakarung jakami. Yakni ula Jubab halor ke resolution belawan radu nong yalam kaliang Mrssa. Dr. Mukul sangma kaba ula kerpa de sorkar banbu iki facilitation center ki jakarung jakami hagajila katkum ke MRSSA arhajar khandrio. Shushu ula ong baka sorkar iki ni ki krdop balashna kal IT no syakatanar ka koi kakhya namar hakatu ka por kadan ka khlam COVID-19 knang ban pej banya ban perking ni ka room kami ki brieu namar ka khlam COVID. Shushu ulit ho baga hukum ke yiyang Bishar katkum ka article 19 subclass 1D ka ong babaro kinong shnong jongkari India kilong light duit ban kendria hakinu ki jaka hapo kari kumta ka Meghalaya High Court kalakrenshai bahag MRSSA kamdan kita ki kendon ban khang ya room kami kinong shnong hapo kari kumta ulong badai na kanikadaw baga sorkar ka shemjing namar kidon shibun ki kendon ki bakhang Mrssa. Menteri Ramba ula ong biang bagajing penteri kam yak MRSSA hajila kidon pras pa akan new tali kishnong but saus pa R4R tali kishnong red kibala dap pendrung kerteng nak benta ki brio benabar ki bawan shong wan sa ki kishnong hadu ka khat sau trik urun phang arjar ar phunrio ula pentikna bayakani ki jingle andange beteng nang ni shakman shu ula ong bagani ki jing persang ban penteri kam yakini ki an hagishnong ka sorkar kadon kajing shamjing namar ki don kishnong ki be trelang bar ki don kishnong ki bomkwa hendai ka sorkar kadang ai persang ban penyat be yakani bar ula kerpat ru ekinong yalam shnong bakini trelang bar ka sorkar bar bakinom penkit than ni kajing lut ha ka sorkar nak benta kajing bo eki kor computer badi banle ekani kajing pendrung kerteng khnang bagani kajing thmu kanong ka bayat be chakmat hadian kani kajing penshai menteri Ramba unong yalam kaliang Mrssa Dr. Mukul sangma ula Weng no ekani ka resolution namar ba ula hon ya kajing Jubab menteri Ramba.
Back to move that whereas the illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx in the state remain a major concern, and whereas to address this concern there has been a collective resolve by the political parties and all stakeholders in the state to prevail upon Government of India to implement ILP under the provision of the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation 1873 through a resolution adopted in this August House. And whereas Government of India has not shown any positive response to implement ILP in the state till date, and whereas the state has legislated its own law to deal with the issue of illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx, the Meghalaya Resident Safety and Security Act 2016. And whereas the MRSSA 2016 provides comprehensive legal framework to regulate the entry, exit, and stay of the people from outside the state in order to ensure safety and security of the citizens, including identifying entry-exit points along the interstate border and establishment of facilitation centers. And whereas the state authorities have identified parcels of land for such entry-exit points and establishment of facilitation centers in order to be crucial to the objective of the MRSSA 2016. Now, therefore, this House do resolve to urge the government to complete the whole process of establishment of the facilitation centers at the identified entry-exit points with proper guidelines and to put in place all other regulatory measures as per the mandate of MRSSA 2016, read Meghalaya Resident Safety and Security Act 2016.
Yes, you may initiate, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, this important exercise of this August House was a culmination of a long-drawn engagement, exhaustive dialogue to see that in absence of the provision of ILP which could have been otherwise implemented in the state of Meghalaya to deal with this huge concern of illegal immigration and the uncontrolled influx. We all are aware of this fact that this has been, this concern, this sensitive issue of dealing with this illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx into the state has not been a matter of concern now, but has been from the very beginning. All the political parties have taken cognizance of this concern. People of the state are more concerned today than ever before because of the reasons which is just in front of our eyes. The other developments which have taken place in the rest of the otherwise tribal-dominated states, where the examples which alerted our people and which actually made our people to look at shouldering collective responsibility to deal with this issue, this challenge, in the best interest of our people and the generations next. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, immediately after the enactment of this act, there was active engagement again with all the stakeholders to give fruition to the objective of this particular act. If you go by the name of the principal act, itself is reflective of the meticulous engagement and discussion amongst the stakeholders as to how, in absence of a law which is enacted by Parliament or otherwise is a law which is under the purview of Parliament, we can also have our own legislative law with the mandate of this August House to deal with this issue. There has been ceaseless demand from the people of the state to convince the government of India to implement ILP in the state. It's not something which happened just recently. It has been there for a long, long time. Therefore, there has been engagement directly or indirectly. During that time, when I had the privilege of leading the government, I did try on the sidelines to read the mind of the people who were running the government of India. In other words, the mind of government of India pertaining to agreeing to this request, this demand of the people and the state of Meghalaya. I knew fully well that it will be a tough call to actually get them to agree. I could see that it would be probably a kind of wasteful engagement because I knew that I would not be able to convince. Therefore, in order to ensure that we as lawmakers look at the space available within the legislative mandate of this August House. Now, while enacting any law, we have to fully understand that we do not go beyond the legislative jurisdiction of the state legislature. Therefore, it was a tightrope walking. When this proposed bill was scripted with utmost exhaustive engagement for a long time with all the stakeholders, the members who represented the civil society organizations on behalf of the people, and including the political parties. It was, while we wanted to put many more other provisions to see that what we want as a replacement, as an alternative to ILP could be possible, but then legislative jurisdiction doesn't allow the state legislature to go beyond. Therefore, whatever was available within the legislative jurisdiction were incorporated in this proposed bill, and I'm grateful that all the political parties at that point of time agreed to pass this bill to give this bill to become a law. Now, in order to implement any law which is legislated, we must come with the rule to implement the mandate of the law. This also was completed, though it is always important to understand that any law which is enacted, whether by the state legislature or the parliament, there is a space for amendment or improvement at any point of time. So also, to script and format the rules in sync, in conformity with the mandate of the law in such a manner that it doesn't conflict with the mandate of the law so enacted. Therefore, it is a responsibility of the government to look at all the spaces available in as far as the mandate of a law is concerned and how to ensure that wherever necessary, if there is a felt necessary, nobody can stop the government from amending to give further power or rather to reinforce its mandate to be enforced in a manner that it becomes more effective to give fruition to the intended objective. Somehow or other, I felt that after the present dispensation took charge, I expected that, having understood the complexity of this problem pertaining to illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx, this particular provision of the mandate of the law can be taken cognizance of, and its application in a manner that will, to a great extent, help us to deal with this concern would be sincerely attempted. But the immediate response that I could see from the present dispensation, the current dispensation, was that after 2018, the first thing that the government tried to do was to amend this act. And in this August House, when the proposed amendment was tabled, I have also cautioned that we must always look at the legislative jurisdiction of the state legislature. The moment it crosses this jurisdiction, then the governor will not be able to give assent to the proposed piece of legislation. That is how the constitutional provision operates. We have this union list, the state list, the concurrent list. So the provision of the Constitution is very clear. We have to know where we should say, yes, this is the maximum limit that we can go, and beyond this is beyond our jurisdiction, beyond our legislative jurisdiction. But in spite of my repeated appeal, for whatever reason, amendment was pushed through. And what was the end result? The governor could not give assent. The moment any law legislated by state legislature, whether while bringing a new proposed bill for consideration or any amendment of any existing law, once it goes beyond the legislative jurisdiction, the Honorable Governor is duty-bound to go by the provision of the Constitution. That's the reason why the proposed amendment was sent to MHA for the necessary constitutional response, which requires examination of such exercise of the state legislature for legislation, whether it in respect of new law or any legislation for amending an existing law, in order to see that if it is within the legislative jurisdiction of the state legislature. The moment it goes beyond, what is the fate of the law? It comes back. Otherwise, it has to be. Therefore, my point here is, rather than giving effect to the provision of this particular act, which is an outcome of long-drawn engagement of all the stakeholders in the government, including all the political parties. Today, we are asking Government of India, and in absence or pending the agreement to agree to implement ILP in the state of Meghalaya, we are not protected effectively by the mandate of this law, which otherwise is available under the mandate of the law. I would be very brief in this because there are many other important issues which is tabled by honorable members of this August House. But as far as this particular Meghalaya Resident Safety and Security Act 2016 is concerned, now yesterday, because similar issue was part of the discussion in this August House, in the first question of the day yesterday, which was pertaining to the government's new initiative to engage with Government of India to give effect to the implementation of particular law enacted by Parliament to address this concern of illegal immigration and influx. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the issue of illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx, we must always look at the nomenclature. While we use this nomenclature, we also have to be very careful in how we interpret. Because the concern is keeping in mind the population structure of our Khasi, Garo, Jaintia, and our tribal people in the state of Meghalaya. How any uncontrolled entry of people from outside and they're residing in the state. If they come as a tourist and go back, that is a different thing. But when this, without the presence of any effective enforcement to the mandate of the law, we cannot regulate the stay of people. Then we don't even know who is staying in our own neighborhood. We have been confronted with such kind of surprises in the past. Sometimes in the same neighborhood, we have people who are from outside who were actually wanted people, including terrorists, members of banned organizations in some localities. We came to know only when the police ultimately raided their houses and arrested those people. This happened in Shillong, this happened in Tura. Therefore, it is this law which gives us a comprehensive, mandate of law to deal with these concerns. We are able to know who is staying, who is resident of our neighborhood. And this law also has given enough power to our traditional institutions. Traditional institutions. If you look at the mandate of this law, that it is not only the authorities under government, which we refer as the police, but also simultaneously the traditional institutions who are mandated, or rather who are empowered by the mandate of this law. In fact, we should remember that there was one particular judgment by the Honorable High Court of Meghalaya, by one of the then judge, now retired, questioning the legal validity of the hetman. Yes. And the operational part of the judgment is self-explanatory. Therefore, it was necessary for the government to come up with a mandate through an enactment of law. And this is comprehensive. This also covers all this. The huge empowerment of our traditional institutions with this particular mandate of law. And how this law has to be read and understood from the perspective of its effectivity to give fruition to our objective of dealing with illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx can be easily understood if one tries to read and understand and comprehend and see how it can be enforced. The nomenclatures used here are very cleverly used in order to ensure that the nomenclature which is incorporated in the proposed bill, which ultimately became an act, do not become a reason for the law wherein the law so enacted may not be able to withstand a judicial scrutiny. Any law passed must be able to withstand the judicial scrutiny. And this law has withstood the judicial scrutiny. That is the reality, that is the fact. Yesterday, while we were discussing, in order to make long story short, I would like to come to the point. There was an indication that the Honorable High Court has come up with its observation. The operational part, we have asked the government to put it on the table of the House so that the members of the August House and the people will know. What is the operational part of that judgment? Has this law been not able to withstand the scrutiny of judiciary? Now, yesterday even the issue of entry-exit point was questioned. But I would like to read the section 17 of the MRSSA 2016, which reads, section 17 subsection 1, the state government may establish facilitation centers at such places and at such locations, particularly at the entry into and exit from the state as may be notified in the official gazette. Where is this word missing? Then subsection 2 says the facilitation centers so established in it shall be under the general direction control of the respective district task force. And all these district task forces have been constituted prior to 2018, after the enactment of this law. And in order to give effect to this intent of this particular section and subsection of section 17 of this act, various other actions have been taken by the respective task force in every district. The task force, along with the involvement of members representing various civil society organizations, have identified all those possible so-called interstate entry and exit points. And based on that, lots of engagement have also taken place with the landowners, with the traditional institutions, even with the private parties who own those lands, all across North Garo Hills, all across West Garo Hills. The land, parcels of land have been already identified. The unfortunate thing is that 2018, I had to vacate the office of CM, and therefore it could not be implemented. But all those efforts of identifying the entry-exit points, wherein there was a very uphill task to even convince the people to agree to part with the parcel of land which belonged to them, which they have inherited. It was a difficult job. But keeping in mind the interests of the people and the state as a whole, they agreed to give those parcels of land, to establish those entry-exit points. Rather, to establish those facilitation centers at the entry-exit points. Whether it is in Southwest Garo Hills, whether it is in West Garo Hills, whether it is in North Garo Hills, whether it is in Jaintia Hills, whether it is in Rivoy, whether it is in other interstate borders. Lots of time and resources have been spent. This task force is headed by the respective deputy commissioners of the district. How much time has been wasted if we don't give due recognition to this endeavor and effort and the purpose, the important purpose and objective which is attached to this endeavor? Therefore, why is this law? Just look at the mandate of the law. Why is this law? It is for the benefit of the state and the people. Don't we need this facilitation center? Yes, we need. Therefore, when the issue of establishment of facilitation center was challenged by one of the petitioners, one of the citizens, the whole adjudication process, government has to defend every provision of law that has been mandated by this August House. If the government does not see how we can defend and protect such important piece of law, then we are found to be wanting in our commitment and the resolve, which is so important in as far as this crucial, sensitive issue is concerned. We knew that if Government of India does not agree to implement ILP, then we must have something of our own, like having one's own baby, rather than depending on somebody else's child to depend on the rest of the life. So our own, the act which has been mandated by this August House, by all of us. So to demonize certain provisions and interpret through action that this piece of legislation is not good enough. Yes, it is not enough, but in absence of ILP, it is good enough. We have discussed about the challenges confronted by the uncontrolled illegal immigration across the globe. Different nations with stringent procedure adopted to restrict entry of foreigners. We tried for visa application to visit United States of America. It's so difficult. In fact, my eldest daughter never got a visa to travel to US. Yes. Many of our friends never get a visa to go to USA. It's so difficult. Many of these nations have such a stringent law to ensure that entry to their nations are strictly, rather they put in so much of stringent provisions to restrict the easy entry, even as a tourist, even as a student. But despite that, today all these nations are struggling because of the immigration that has taken place over the years, over the decades. Whether it is UK, whether it is European nations, or whether it is America, it is because of illegal immigration. The world is in turmoil. The hatred emanates from that. And today, therefore, prevention is better than cure. Why is today what we see in our own state is happening? It is precisely because of this, because we are failing to protect, we are perceived to have failed collectively, not just our distinguished members who are in the treasury benches, but all of us. We are perceived to have failed. That's why the anger and the resultant, all those, whatever is happening across. Now, in order to complement these things, we have worked on number of programs also. While we implement certain programs, we wanted to ensure that our issue of this uncontrolled influx can be dealt with. I would like to refer to one particular provision which we have incorporated even while framing the program for submission to Government of India to be considered under externally aided program, EAP, which is being implemented even now, which was sanctioned in 2017, and today that is the main flagship EAP program which is transforming the state in respect of building innumerable infrastructures, particularly road, and the connected development associated with road. It's not confined to road. Here, while formatting and preparing this whole comprehensive proposal, We understood this issue of uncontrolled influx. Therefore, there's a component for labor management plan. Because it says that all our studies show that labor influx for construction works can lead to a variety of adverse social and environmental risks and impact, such as conflicts between the local community and the construction workers, increased risk of illicit behavior and crime, impacts on community dynamics, increased burden on and competition for public service provision, increased risk of communicable diseases and burden on local health services, gender-based violence, local inflation of prices, and increased pressure on accommodation and rent. This is part and parcel of the program under MITP. So, having referred to the mandate of the MRSSA Act 2016, I am also indicating that, yes, we require comprehensive measures which amplify each other, complement each other, and create an enabling environment. All these provisions will be funneled together to achieve the objective. So, with this MRSSA, look at some more other measures, like while implementing the programs. Today, though this provision is there under MITP, it is not being adhered to. Go anywhere, the labors are from outside. In fact, the implementation and building of roads under this MITP is rather displacing our own labors. Therefore, these particular programs, again, therefore, there is a provision to scale up their skill, to provide all kinds of support system. Fund is integrated in this. Therefore, look at the other ways and means of doing things. But therefore, I think it is necessary that government of the day, under the leadership of a young, passionate leader of the House, let us relook at this mandate. Let us look at how these facilitation centers can be put to place and operationalize all this. And let us revisit those areas which are so crucially required to create these infrastructures which will give fruition to the objective of this law. Though the other provisions of this law is already being enforced, I'm happy, but then unless we do this, it will not complement each other. And with this, there are also other measures which is intended to give the kind of teeth to the enforcing agencies to look at all kinds of movement of people and also to look at from the security aspect of the people who travel. I would therefore urge upon the government that government take this very submission with complete positivity, keeping in mind the impact of this mandate of the law that it can bring to deal with this concern to a great extent possible. It is not going to enable us to have 100% intended result, but it definitely has enough teeth to somehow enable us to integrate this mandate of the law with other existing provisions of law and other measures at the time of implementation of different programs. There are multiple laws which can be integrated, and just because this particular issue is tabled by me as a resolution, as usual, the opposition has to vote against the proposed resolution. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I think last time when we proposed this particular bill to be considered by this August House, there was unanimity. There was unanimity. It need not come as a resolution, but then government should indicate that yes, it will examine it with utmost sense of sincerity and responsibility to give effect to all these provisions, which has become integral part of this mandate of the law. And accordingly, wherever needed, may the government look at further amending the rules within the mandate of the law. There is no need to go for any amendment of the Principal Act at the moment. But rules can be amended in a manner which can give complete framework where there will be no areas of different interpretation of the intent of every section of the law. With these few words, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I propose this resolution to be adopted by this August House with the honest intent of giving effect to this law, which has been passed unanimously by this August House after having an exhaustive engagement discussion and agreement to give this kind of mandate to the enforcing authorities through this Meghalaya Resident Safety and Security Act 2016. With these few submissions, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I once again appeal the House to consider this.
The very outset, I would like to thank the Leader of Opposition, Dr. Mukul Sangma, and the Honorable MLA from Dadingri constituency, who have moved the resolution that whereas the illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx in the state remain a major concern, and whereas to address this concern, there has been a collective resolve by the political parties and all stakeholders in the state to prevail upon the Government of India to implement ILP under the provisions of the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation 1873 through a resolution adopted in this August House. And whereas Government of India has not shown any positive response to implement ILP in the state till date, and whereas the state has legislated its own law to deal with the issue of illegal immigration and uncontrolled influx, the Mrssa Act 2016, and whereas the Mrssa 2016 provides comprehensive legal framework to regulate the entry, exit and stay of people from outside the state in order to ensure safety and security of the citizens, including identifying entry-exit points along the interstate border and establishment of facilitation centers. And whereas the state authorities have identified parcels of land for such entry-exit points and establishment of facilitation centers in order to give fruition to the objective of Mrssa 2016. Now, therefore, this House do resolve to urge the government to complete the whole process of establishment of facilitation centers at the identified entry-exit points with proper guidelines and to put in place all other regulatory measures as per the mandate of Mrssa 2016. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I would once again like to thank the Honorable LO for having brought this resolution. I think there is no doubt, I would not even use the word I think, I would rather say that there is no doubt that when it comes to illegal immigration and protection of our people and the protection of our land, it is the top priority of every single member of this House, and I'm sure every single citizen of our state. Let there be no doubt about that intent and that desire to ensure that there is no illegal immigration in our state. For the government This has been one of the most important agendas to ensure that we are able to create a mechanism to be able to protect our people. For that, we have done multiple actions, and I will speak about them a bit later. But let me start by mentioning, sir, that the intent, the same intent that we all have, the same intent is the intent with which the then government had come out with the Mrssa 2016. So it's very clear, sir, that the intent was very positive, the intent was very good, and the intent was correct. But while that intent is there, and as correctly mentioned by the Honorable Leader of Opposition, we are confined and we work under constraints of multiple acts, multiple laws, provisions made by the Parliament, provisions in the Constitution, and having to create a law to navigate through these complexities is really where the challenge lies. And I would like to dwell upon that for a moment. So let me go back to the court, the High Court order, which was given on the 2nd of December 2021 in regards to the Mrssa. So the Honorable High Court noted, and I'll speak very slowly, sir, because this is very important words. The Honorable High Court noted that the provisions of the Mrssa, I mean 2016, are omnibus in nature, in as such as specific parameters for restricting and regulating the entry or movement of citizens at the entry and exit of Meghalaya were not specifically provided in the Act. This is the High Court order, sir. It says again, is that in as such as specific parameters for restricting and regulating the entry or movement of citizens at the entry and exit of Meghalaya were not specifically provided in the Act. And therefore, the Honorable High Court stayed the operation of such provisions during the course of the pendency of the PIL. Sir, again I go back to the point that we have to go through the entire scrutiny of court. The Act must and will be scrutinized by the judiciary. And that is exactly the challenge which the Mrssa faced. And as I was mentioning earlier, sir, that the court specified that the entry and exit were not, the parameters for restricting and regulating the entry or movement of citizens at the entry and exit of Meghalaya were not specifically provided in the Act. This really placed or put the challenge in front of us. And accordingly, the government, the judiciary stayed this operation, and we had to close down the entry-exit gates that we had constructed and the facilitation center that we had created. That is the first case that happened. Consequently, sir, we approached the High Court again, and as you all know, we were right in the thick of COVID-19, the pandemic. And in that particular case, we went back to court, and the High Court observed that the use of the facilitation center was limited for identifying and screening persons whether they were afflicted by the dreaded disease of COVID-19 or not. I repeat, sir, the use of the facilitation center was limited for identifying and screening persons whether they were afflicted by the dreaded disease COVID-19 or not. This aspect came to be noted by the Honorable High Court in its order 22nd of February 2022. And at the end, the PIL, the earlier PIL which was filed, was disposed by an order dated 27th May 2022, was disposed in view of the fact, so this is the most important part, in view of the fact that the relevant facilitation center were handed over to the health department for checking of coronavirus infection. So technically, it was more of a health concern that led to, and many states were, in fact, doing this aspect. And court specifically mentioned, sir, I will take the time to specifically read out what the court, in fact, ordered in the second order that it said. And the court order says that the checkpoints are in place, but it does not appear that anything untoward is being done for it, or the periodic checking has resulted in any serious impediment to free passage. So that the periodic checking has resulted in any serious impediment to free passage. So nothing appears to be there. This is what the court says. That is checking the free movement of individuals. Indeed, the petitioner says, that is the government, that the relevant gates have been handed over to the health department for checking for the coronavirus infection. And the activities at the gate were restricted to the same. The activities at the gate are restricted to the same, which means checking of coronavirus. Accordingly, the PIL number 13 is closed. Hence, the PIL at that point was closed, not because the court agreed to the provisions that were there or the provisions which were not there in the act, but because government at that point had said that these gates are, at that point in time, we were at the height of coronavirus, and that check gate was handed over to health department for entry exit. So I just wanted to clear the air around what the court has been saying. Sir, also, just to again add, sir, to what the court has mentioned again, that as per Article 19, subclause 1D specifically, provides that all citizens the fundamental right to freely move throughout the territory of India. However, for the purpose of India, this fundamental right is subject to reasonable restrictions under Article 19, subclause 5 of the Constitution. However, for the purposes of the said section to be provided, reasonable restrictions, specific parameters must be identified when the movement of the citizens can be restricted. The Honorable High Court of Meghalaya has noted that these specific instances are not provided in the MRSS Act 2016 as far as the facilitation centers are concerned. So, sir, we faced this kind of a situation where there was a lot of legal scrutiny as to the provisions that were there in the Act of 2016, and obviously as per the rules that were then created. And this is not our interpretation, the judiciary interprets, and this is the High Court that interpreted what I just mentioned to you, sir. And hence, we were in a very difficult position to continue with the facilitation center or to activate any of the facilitation center, because the High Court completely has struck down the whole thing, saying that there is no specific, that there has to be certain specific parameters for identifying the restrictions and providing reasonable restrictions. We have to specify those purposes and instances, which is not there in the MRSSA Act. This is the interpretation of the court, sir. This is not my interpretation. So I just wanted to clarify that one point. So second, I think it's also important to take one step back. Now, what is the MRSSA objective? And Honorable LO will be in the best position to give more light on that. But apart from many other aspects, sir, which I don't want to go into, there were two main agendas that were to be achieved by the MRSSA. First agenda was, of course, to have a mechanism for entry and exit, to be able to check who's coming in and are they going out. That was the first one, and based on that, the facilitation centers had to be put up. But the facilitation centers that were put up for the entry-exit did not stand the test of or the scrutiny of the judiciary. And I explained, sir, that the only reason why the PIL was disposed of at the second phase was because it was handed over to the Health Department to act as a screening point for COVID-19. The second purpose was to then, of the MRSSA, was to register and keep a track of people who are coming into the state. Now, that of course is an area where activity is going on, sir. And just so that the House is aware, that till February 14, 2026, 817 localities and 427 sub-localities have already been registered till date, sir. So this process is on. I take the suggestions of respected and honorable members. Our honorable member from Dading has suggested that we should start the exercise in other parts of the state, in Jente Hills also, in Garo Hills also, and I definitely take this suggestion as a positive suggestion. And definitely, sir, we will move into that aspect also. So the second part of getting the registration and monitoring the people who come and stay in rented houses or different accommodations, and training the different headmans or nokmas or development committees, so on and so forth, this aspect can definitely continue. And I can assure the House, sir, as I said, if the Honorable LO will remember, that this was in fact discussed many times before also. So in the earlier first few phases which were taken up, in the first phase, sir, we had only 9 localities. This was right at the beginning, sir. As correctly mentioned by Honorable LO, that 2016 the law was passed, and of course 2 years, for whatever reason, nothing was implemented at that point in time. But 2018, as soon as we came in, sir, we implemented. We started putting all the things in place. We started putting up the facilitation centers. And that's when the court came in and they struck it down. And of course, in the beginning, sir, there are rules to be made, there are lands to be acquired. So it's a process, I can understand. So the process happened. And by 2018, we started the process and we started engaging with the localities. And I remember multiple times this was brought to the House. So in the first phase, only 9 localities were taken up. Then there was a suggestion from the House that no more should be done. We went to the second phase. Then we took up 7 more localities in the second phase. Then, of course, more pressure came that no, this is not enough, please do more. And I gave an assurance to the House that we will do more. And I'm happy to tell you that in phase 3, all the remaining localities in Shillong area, including Shillong Municipal Board, Shillong Cantonment Board, civil subdivisions and different blocks, we have then created the different bodies that are there. The technical words are forgetting. So that the technical headed by Deputy Commissioner. So these committees were set up, and slowly and steadily we started to expand. So in the third phase, after I gave a commitment to the House in the last session, I can't remember. So activity has picked up because we are learning, sir, as we move along. This is not a regular exercise. It requires a lot of coordination. every locality there's a different condition, different leaders are there, some support, some don't support, some do support but then they don't do the activity, they come for the training but then they have to be pushed to again continue with the registration. It's a very tedious and complicated and not an easy exercise as it may sound. If it's automatic and everybody takes responsibility, which I hope that this kind of resolutions will send that message to the public, that this can only happen if all of us work together. If all citizens, publics, Nokmas, Rangbashnongs, everybody has to put in their effort. So, the question comes in that, okay, now we'll do this, but who's going to pay us to do this? So, we don't have provision to start paying every locality an amount every month to have a data entry operator to enter this. These were discussed, sir, and these are factual matters. So we actually had to motivate them, saying that this is for your own good. So you must do this. So when we started moving, they said, well, give us computers. We don't have computers. So we can do for 100, 200, 300. But we have maybe close to 7,000 listed villages and maybe more than 12,000, 15,000 smaller villages which are there. So that's why the exercise is very complicated, because it requires a lot of logistical support, and sometimes we don't get the kind of response at the grassroots level which we all would expect. But my point being that the second part is something that we are moving, and we will continue to move, which is the registration part and monitoring part, which I feel is a very, very, very critical and very important part of the Act. And this is something that we will continue to pursue and ensure that this happens. And as I said, I assure the House and the members that we will take special interest to ensure that in other regions, especially regions where there is more economic activity, there is more movement of migrant workers, maybe, so on and so forth, that we will take up this activity there. And I take this suggestion in a very positive way. And I assure the House that, that we will definitely go into this aspect, sir. Sir, apart from that, again, as I said, not to undermine the MRSSA in any way. As I said, the intent was correct. But as you saw, sir, the court has made its observations very clear. I don't want to repeat the language, but it has put that restriction right now. And because of that, sir, we are not able to move forward. And that's the reason why we went for the amendment. So that because we already knew ahead of time that this is going to be a tough point. The fact that the amendment did not go through, therefore, it did not impact the court order. The court order came out based on the 2016 Act, sir. It did not come out on the basis of the proposed amendment that we were thinking. And ultimately, the proposed amendment also did not go through because we were hoping that we'll be able to give more teeth, as mentioned by LO, to this Act so that we can actually pass through that test of the judiciary, which is what we got stuck with. And of course, there were multiple challenges. We know what happened. And because of that, ultimately, this ended up in MHA. And also, I want to just share with all of the members of the House that when this went to MHA, the written reply that came to us from Government of India was that the proposed amendments in the bill appears to have outreached the original intent of the MRSSA by seeking details of all persons rather than only tenants already residing in the state, entering into the state and providing for punishment for not doing so. So the proposed amendment bill appears to be violating Article 19, 1D and E of the Constitution. Now, so we had to do this. We had to do this because of the fact that the rules that were created and the desire of the people was to be able to check every single person coming in. And we were not able to do that based on the existing law and the existing, well, the rules said that we will now check everybody, but provisions in the law were not there. The provisions of the law stuck, as Honorable LO will know, stuck to criminals who are there or tourists who are coming in, so on and so forth. But as I said, that also had to be mandated in the Act itself. So that's where the clash took place, that's where the confusion took place, that's where the complications came out, and that's why we were not able to take things forward. As I said, sir, the original Act with its right intentions, was absolutely in the right direction. But as I said, because of the different aspects and different conflicts with the law at the national level, and also the observations that we got from the High Court, we were not able to proceed. And hence, as suggested, we need to make some amendments, but we are still in discussions with Government of India on that matter to be able to take it forward. And that's why, sir, we thought that this checkpoints and entry-exit points that we have been trying to put even through the MRSSA, which did not stand the test of judiciary, we thought that through the Foreigners and Immigration Act 2025, we should be, or we will be able to get an option to implement that. So that's how things are moving, sir. We are exploring all options. And as I said, what is important to remember, which I mentioned even yesterday, sir, in my opening remarks, is that when we talk of any law or any act, and we say we want this particular act, so that creates a point of position for us. So what is our position? Our position is ILP. Whereas, it is important for us as a government and as a legislature to look at what is our interest. What do we desire to achieve? Not our position, but what we desire to achieve. Because desire to achieve is a mechanism to check illegal immigration. That's our mechanism. Or to check the influx, or to check the people coming into our state. That is the issue. Now, ILP or MRSSA or Foreigners Act in mix or as individuals may help us achieve that goal. But we are facing challenges in all of them, sir. So if part of this is happening through the MRSSA, somewhere we are trying to push ILP, we took the resolution showing our intent that we are serious about it, that hopefully we'll get the ILP, and we're still pursuing it, sir. The third part we're looking at in the Foreigners and the Immigration Act 2025, which I hope will be able to give us that provision which we require to be able to achieve this objective and this issue, resolve this issue of having that mechanism to check influx. So I think this is very important for the House to understand. So we should not. I think in the past also, sir, without going into details, Honorable LO will remember, sir. And I don't want to go into details because I understand that's how positions change, situations change. But there were arguments even between, Honorable MLA, who is not here today, of Nongkrem and Honorable LO when he was Chief Minister. When they did not agree that no, one said we should have ILP, then the other said no, we should not have ILP. To the extent that the LO had even said that then CM had said that, you are changing your stand now. Earlier you said you want ILP, now you don't want ILP. So my point being, sir, that our positions can change. It's natural, sir, because we start to understand the pros and cons of a certain position. So what I'm trying to tell the House, sir, is that we should not be driven by a position. We should not be driven by the fact that, oh, I will not change my stand, ILP is my stand. We have to realize that we need to achieve our goal, not to win on our stand. Our goal is a mechanism. So how do we change? And therefore in the past also, and for me also, sir, sometimes I see plus in it, sometimes I see minus in it. My position changes based on what I understand better of the situations in the law. So these things happen, sir. But my larger point that I'm trying to make, sir, is that as legislatures, we need to go beyond position. We need to go beyond position. Our positions change in the sense that today I say that ILP is good, tomorrow I may say ILP is not good, day after I may say no, for Foreigners Act is good, I may not say it's not good. So those can change, but our objective remains the same. So I would like to urge the House that we should think in that positive term, be united in our efforts, and work towards that common objective of creating that mechanism to achieve that final goal, sir. Having said that, sir, what do we do with our laws and regulations is obviously a mechanism that we'll put in place. We're working towards that. We're doing our thing, our work, and trying to improve that, which is a continuous process. But at the end of the day, what is important is to remember that we have a larger socio-economic issue. Whether you talk of illegal immigration or whether you talk of unemployment, all of the other aspects, so these are all connected together. And at the end of the day, it is only by finding long-term socio-economic solutions. Number two, in the long run, ensuring that every stakeholder at every level plays their role and takes their responsibility seriously. Only when these two things come together will we be able to find a long-term solution to tackle illegal immigration, sir. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Now, what do I mean by long-term, sir? So when you think of long-term, correctly as mentioned, today, why do illegal immigrants come into our state? If you talk of a person from Bangladesh, for example, wants to come in and starts, sir, they don't want to come to our state because they want to vote here. They don't. They're coming in here because of economics. They're coming in here because they're getting a job. The Honorable MLA from Dadingri mentioned that there were some individuals in a certain incident who are from a different country. Why did they come here? Because of economics. It's not they want to vote. But at the end of the day, they realize that the only way to earn and be able to get economics is to be able to get identity and be a voter here. Whereas if you look at many, many developed nations that are there, what do, sir? They create, and I spoke about this about, I think maybe about 10 years, almost 8 years back, sir. That if you look at other nations, I'll give example of Australia. They give you what they call a work permit. You can work, you can earn, you pay taxes, you can do everything in Australia because they don't have enough manpower, say for doctors, for nurses, or other skills that are required out there. But what does Australia say? You can do everything and you are Australian in every sense, but you can't vote. But you can't vote. So that is how they created their system. I'm not saying we have to do it, but I'm just giving an example of what Australia did. They created a work permit because they said, look, we need manpower. We need to have workers. We don't have doctors. We don't have enough nurses. Our population is aging, so on and so forth. So they gave work permit, got best doctors, paying them well, but they will never be allowed to vote. Never. They'll never become full-fledged citizens. Now, what I'm trying to say, sir, in the long run, we have to realize that it's a socio-economic issue. Till the time our youngsters are not able to provide the similar skills that maybe people coming in from outside are providing. Like we had a big problem, and we always have a big problem of mistri, we call. I think so you also must be having similar problems in terms of, even the houses or even your constituency work. I think every MLA must be suffering, especially Garo Hills. That as soon as there's a situation where there's a communal tension, we have very few people who are there to work in terms of masonry or mistri as we call it. So hence there's a need for our people to develop that skill, to be an alternative or be the primary providers of that kind of a service. I'm not saying that we take away people's jobs, but I'm saying that somewhere along the line in the long run, we need to work in that. So skilling is very important, correctly mentioned. Number two, sir, we need to develop entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, an enterprising economy, an economy where youngsters take calculated risks, build up businesses, and provide opportunity to local boys and girls, that is how an economy moves forward and economy changes, sir. And therefore, it's important that we push entrepreneurship. We have, in fact, as a government, we took initiative because we realized that there is a lot of problem of migrant laborers. So you must be remembering, sir, we came out with the Meghalaya Identification, Regulation, Safety, Security of Migrant Workers Act 2020. This was again done to provide that, again, mechanism to be able to have some kind of a registration and check for migrant laborers and migrant workers. Now, it's not perfect, again, as mentioned by Honorable LO. But we take initiative. We work out. We take steps. Sometimes it doesn't work. We amend the law. We move forward. We take suggestions from people. But I think the intent has already been cleared, sir. We are all for it. And we want this to be a situation where we are able to find the right mechanism. MRSS, as I said, has got two major sections to it, or rather two main objectives, apart from many other. The first one being the entry-exit is facing challenges because of the fact that it does not test, it's not standing the test of judiciary, and I've read out the orders of the court. In the process, we are looking at how we could amend and move forward, but again, we are facing challenges there too. So while that continues, I don't want to use the word battle, but while that battle continues, I don't have a better word right now, but while that battle and that situation continues, the fact that the MRSSA, the second part, which is to do the registration and empower the local bodies, is definitely a welcome suggestion, sir. And as I said, we are moving forward in it. It's not that we are not. Every time the honorable members bring this subject out, we go even one step further. But I've told you the problems we face, because it requires a lot of pushing, a lot of logistic support, a lot of monitoring, and obviously as administration there are multiple tasks to be done. So sometimes we call the meeting, request, some do it, some don't do it, some localities take interest, others don't take interest. So it's a very, very complicated process to motivate people to do, but doesn't mean we won't try. We are trying, we have succeeded to a large extent, but I'm just appealing through you, sir, that if honorable MLAs, if honorable local leaders, if local locality traditional heads can also take that step and initiative to say, look, let's work with the government. Let's not just say this government's job alone, because ultimately it affects all of us. So let's work together. I think that could be one of the very, very positive outcomes of this discussion today. So through you, sir, I appeal that the MLAs and the legislatures, the legislatures and the public at large and the traditional heads, and especially the locality heads, if they could work with the government in a positive manner and support in the logistical support that is required. Government also will do whatever is possible, but government cannot do everything. So therefore, in that we require the support. As I mentioned, they're requesting that if there can be salaries be paid to one data entry operator in every locality, so that data entry can be done and an office can be set up, to office to be set up in all the localities. Computers and other infrastructure be given to all the localities. So we can do it in a phase-wise manner, but as I said, there are challenges and limitations. And of course, this is a very important issue, and that's why we went ahead and we supported also. But as I said, if localities can come forward and take some part of that responsibility and not just leave whole financial burden on the government, I think that would really help us to move forward in implementing that second part of the MRSSA Act, sir. So therefore, sir, I don't want to read the reply that was made by the department. It's a long reply. I thought it's better I speak directly on the issues that are there and address the concerns of the honorable members. And I hope, sir, with this explanation, I have been able to satisfy the concerns of the MLAs and the Leader of Opposition. As correctly mentioned by them, there is nothing that's perfect. There is nothing that is 100% that is going to be working fine, but it's our duty to try. And let me assure them and the whole House that government is leaving no stone unturned in the process of doing this, and we will continue to do this, and will assure the House that while we work towards finding a solution for the entry-exit gates, which will stand the test of judiciary and the scrutiny of judiciary, we will continue to work towards ensuring that the second part of registration and involving the localities continues. So this aspect and this thing is what I wanted to clarify. And with that clarification, sir, I would like to request the mover of this resolution to withdraw this resolution. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, before I express my mind of withdrawing or not withdrawing the resolution, I would like to, at the very outset, thank the Honorable Chief Minister for being very exhaustive and for being pertinent to the points, which comes as a kind of hurdle in the whole process of implementation of this very important law that this August House agreed to pass, and it has become an act. Now, we know that there will be challenges at the time of implementation, because the whole provisions of this act itself has certain components where certain sense of restriction of people's right, fundamental rights will be perceived during the process of implementation. This challenge was discussed exhaustively, but here one thing is that this law actually is designed, if we go by the intent, so that it will be an enabling moment for us to understand how we should move forward to give fruition to the objective in a manner where probably we have to come back to this August House to have the appropriate amendment, for which I think a healthy discussion will always be important and necessary. Here, to give an idea, is that the initial intent of the Act was to ensure the safety and security of the citizens of the state by preventing anti-social elements from gaining shelter in the state, which might be detrimental to the peace and tranquility, to maintain public order and peace, to verify and regulate the tenants residing in rented houses in the state, to establish district task force and facilitation centers, to facilitate effective enforcement of various laws, for safety and security of the citizen and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Therefore, this facilitation center and other measures are not to work in silo in as far as the mandate of the law is concerned. We have Foreigners Act 1946 and various other laws which is now to a great extent subsumed in Immigration and Foreigners Act 2005. But there are a number of laws. So while implementing, like we have the infiltration check gate. In Garobada we have, in Barnihat we have. So these are by virtue of the mandate of the existing laws which are enacted by the parliament. So how we synergize our endeavor. So therefore, if the court's observation was probably without giving, because sometimes we have to also know how to defend certain cases when we are subjected to judicial scrutiny. But having said that, what I can understand is that the observation of the Honorable High Court is very specific, that in absence of appropriate parameters, the parameters in the law, in the Act, so that can be examined and appropriately amended. If the court observation was 2022, now this is 2026. So therefore, my concern was that, okay, maybe the government doesn't want to really look at this space which is available for the House to come back and give that kind of whatever is required to be considered by this August House to ensure that these provisions can be effectively enforced. And whatever is felt necessary to achieve the objective of the broader perspective, which is the collective intent, collective desire of the people of the state. Since we are lawmakers, I think we only understand as to how we should effectively fulfill our responsibility as lawmakers. Any law, but another thing is that at least this act per se, even if we look at the observation of the MHA, Government of India, and the observation of the Honorable High Court, it has withstood the judicial scrutiny. It has, but only certain provisions in respect of the implementation of this facilitation center only. We use the word facilitation center, and if we look at the mandate to the facilitation center is also to a great extent to ensure that we are actually facilitating, we are not restricting. So how we dovetail the languages and nomenclature in the expected measures to further amend and give effect to this intent of the law, I think this should be something which the government should look at. I would like to, through you, Mr. Speaker, sir, let us have a collective endeavor to see wherever needed for amendment and to give effect to the intent. It will help to a great extent because the multiple laws are there. How we implement those laws. Now, even if we want to really identify areas to restrict, if we go by the earlier law, Foreigners Act 1946, Section 3, subsection 2 of subclause, I think it is E. Anyway, it is in Section 3, where the restriction of movement of the foreigners are vested with various authorities. That's the reason why we have the infiltration check gate. Now, how many infiltration check gate we want to have and how we create that infiltration check gate, and also in respect of enforcing other laws which are passed by Parliament, which is beyond our legislative jurisdiction, and aggregate this, integrate this. I think that is how it can be designed. So with this observation, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to thank Honorable Chief Minister. But the fact that after having seen the observation of the Honorable High Court in 2022, I think lots of time has passed. And I agree that various other, rather beyond Shillong and beyond the Khasiat's region, this particular provision, other relevant sections of the law, which will ensure us to regulate the stay, entry, and uncontrolled entry and stay, unregulated stay, because that is where the main intent of the law is. I was referring to the challenges of the illegal immigration of nations which have got such a stringent immigration laws and measures, yet they suffer from the problem of illegal immigration. Because after entering, what they do, whether they go back, whether they return to their respective nations, that is the challenge. Here also, after entering, whether they stay or not, how we regulate through this mandate of the law, I think it is quite comprehensive. Further, more effective teeth we want to give, I think that can be examined, but it is necessary to not wait for any further. But I would like to, through you, Mr. Speaker, sir, urge the government, urge the Chief Minister to really look at expeditious endeavor to discuss for further amendment and to see that all those observations of the Honorable Court and the judiciary can be overcome through an enactment of law. Law and order is a state subject. That's why we say that it is for safety and security of the resident. Therefore, I think there's lots of space to navigate as to how we nomenclature the words that will be incorporated in any amendment and the existing law. So with these few words, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to just get a categorical reply from the Honorable Chief Minister and assurance that at least this needed effort will be forthcoming from the government.
Sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you. I would like to thank the Honorable Elo for his positive suggestions, I must say. And as mentioned earlier, sir, that there are two important objectives that are there. The first, of course, is the registration and the task force and activating the villages and the localities, which is an ongoing process. And I assure the House and the Honorable Elo that this will continue in a much more aggressive way. But we'll look and we seek for support from local MLAs as well as from the traditional heads and leaders to work with us to achieve that. In the second part, sir, in fact, MHA has asked us to relook into the aspects of the MRSSA. So we have been given a mandate, I should say, by the MHA, saying that you need to relook into this MRSSA. So therefore, we are in fact working from the law department and our respected AG and of course the home department. So we are all, and the political department of course, so we are all working together in this and trying to exactly navigate through this entire very complicated web of laws and rules and counter rules and national level parliament rules and state rules and constitution, and seeing how we'll be able to achieve our goal, keeping all of these factors in mind. And that's the reason why we thought that the entry-exit points could be then validated through a law, which is the Foreigners and Immigration Act of 2025, having restriction and restricted area conditions put in, and then we would be able to activate the entry-exit point. So precisely that's what we are trying to do. But definitely we'll welcome suggestions, and if this requires us to engage with our political parties, we will welcome that, and we will have a session where we will discuss, or multiple sessions I should say, where we'll take suggestions from the political parties on this matter and see how we could navigate and figure out how the MRSSA could be amended and be given more strength. So all, as I said, sir, our intent is the same. We are all on the same boat in this particular objective, and let it be very clear to the House that we are very open to suggestions. We are very keen to find a solution. We have faced a lot of difficulty and challenges because of multiple reasons, but we are slowly and steadily moving forward. But as I said, I assure the House that we will definitely re-examine the entire aspect and see how we could bring in relevant amendments in the MRSSA, which would, again, as I said, stand the scrutiny of the judiciary as well as of the Government of India and the Parliament. So with this assurance, sir, I once again would like to urge through you to request the Honorable Elo if you can withdraw the resolution.
May I know the mind of the mover of the resolution, whether we he wishes to withdraw or not withdraw?
Mr. Speaker, sir, my mind is very positive. I would like to say thank you to Honorable Chief Minister. Today's discussion pertaining to this very important resolution is definitely a reflection of the collective resolve and intent, and it proves our collective sense of responsibility towards this very crucial issue that we need to deal and address. So we look forward for all those collective measures. During our time, we did discussion with lots of stakeholders and all. I think that's how we were able to get the complete unanimity in this August House at that time. So with this observation, with this positive observation, and my power of anticipation, which says that, yes, we will overcome, I think I take this privilege to say thank you to the government and withdraw this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.